Husband steals wife's car, then forces her to beg family for money to buy a new one. When Olivia comes home, her husband is screaming at her. The car's been stolen. This is all your fault. She's being blamed, humiliated in front of all the neighbors. But thanks to an old GPS tracker her father left behind, she discovers the shocking truth. The car was never stolen. It's sitting peacefully at a luxury resort 60 miles away. So she takes her last penny and travels there in secret. And what she sees makes her blood run cold. Her husband and mother-in-law are sitting there, drinking champagne, laughing at a 5-star restaurant. Like nothing happened. But what she finds inside the car afterwards will make you absolutely furious. This woman's revenge will leave you speechless. I opened the apartment door, and immediately, my husband's shouts crashed over me. Marcus stood in the middle of the hallway, his face twisted with rage. The car's been stolen. I knew it. This is all your fault. I froze in the doorway, unable to utter a word. A chill ran down my spine. What? Stolen how? 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 He mocked. You always leave it wherever you feel like. You've got nothing but air in your head. You can't be trusted with a car. You can't protect anything. He yelled so loudly that I was sure all the neighbors could hear, especially since the door to the stairwell was still ajar. My cheeks burned with shame and humiliation. He'd never allowed himself to act like this before. Marcus, I left it in the parking lot by the store for just half an hour. Exactly. He jabbed a finger at me. You can't be trusted with anything? Nothing. I silently walked into the room, feeling utterly degraded. The car. It wasn't just any car. It was the last gift from my late father. He'd bought it for me 6 months before his death. He said it was so I'd always have wheels, so I'd be independent. Dad was gone, but the car remained like a memory, like my most precious treasure. Marcus had always been jealous of it. He said it was too fancy a gift for a woman, that I didn't deserve it. It infuriated him that I had something of my own, unconnected to him, something that gave me a sliver of freedom, and his mother, my mother-in-law Vivian, poured fuel on the fire. You're just sitting on my son's neck, she'd hiss at every meeting. You earn pennies, yet you drive around in that car. My Marky works 2 jobs to support the family. I worked as a manager in a small firm. The salary wasn't great, but it was steady. But in their eyes, I was still a freeloader. And now the car was gone. The last thread connecting me to my father and my old life had vanished. Marcus was crushing me with his cruelty. I'll call the police, and you just sit there and stay out of sight. You're useless anyway. He spoke as if I'd stolen it myself, as if I'd done it to spite him. Pain and resentment choked me. I sat on the bed, curled into a ball. The grief was so overwhelming that I could barely hear or breathe. And then a fragment of a memory flashed in my mind, distant, almost forgotten, but clear as a burst of light. There was my father, holding out a small black keychain on his palm, looking like a flash drive. His warm smile and quiet voice comforted me. This is an old GPS tracker. Toss it in the glove compartment. Let it stay there. No one should know about it. I just nodded back then, not thinking much of it. I threw the keychain in the glove box as he asked, and forgot about it immediately. But Dad had mentioned there was a second part, a receiver. Where was it? Memory tossed up another image. An old shoebox in the closet. Dad called it his treasure chest. He kept old photos, his service medals, and all sorts of mementos dear to him. And he'd put that receiver right in there. Just in case, sweetie, he'd said. Let it be, just in case. That case had arrived. I jumped off the bed. My heart pounded wildly. What if this was my only chance? I rushed to the closet, ignoring Marcus, who was loudly talking on the phone in the next room. His voice dripped with fake sympathy for himself. Yeah, can you believe it? Stolen. Olivia's in shock, of course. She's so fragile. Left the car wide open, come and take it, anyone who wants. I clenched my teeth to keep from screaming. I found the treasured box on the shelf, covered in dust. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. On top were black and white photos of my young parents. There they were at the beach, happily embracing. Me as a little girl, sitting on Dad's lap. Tears welled up in a wave. I brushed them away. No time for sentimentality. I dug through the contents: old letters, Grandpa's badges, a pocket watch. And there, at the bottom, under a velvet cloth, I found it. A small device with a tiny antenna and a dim screen. It was very, very old. Did it even work? I located the small power button on the case and held my breath, fingers fumbling. One click, nothing. Second click. The screen flickered for a moment and went dark again. Battery dead. Of course, after all these years, I scanned the room frantically for a charging cable. It needed an old connector, one you can't find nowadays. But then I noticed the back had a compartment for regular AA batteries. Thank God. I pulled batteries from a useless television remote lying around, inserted them carefully, minding the polarity, and prayed to every god I'd never believed in. I pressed the button. 1 second, 2, 3. The screen lit up with a dim green glow. It worked. The device came alive in my hands like a little miracle, like a hello from Dad from the other side. The battery was almost dead, judging by the flashing indicator. But that didn't matter. The main thing was, it turned on. A schematic map appeared on the screen, with a tiny dot faintly blinking. The signal was very weak, but it was there. At that moment, Marcus walked into the room, finishing his phone call. I called the police, he announced in an icy tone. Explained the situation. Said you're under heavy stress and can't talk right now. They were understanding. He looked at me with contempt. I also mentioned you're scatterbrained, leaving keys anywhere. In the ignition, doors unlocked so they'd know who they're dealing with. My breath caught at such brazen lies. He'd portrayed me to the police as a crazy idiot. Before I could say a word, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and handed it to me with a malicious smirk. It's Mom. She's worried about the car. Take it. I didn't want to answer, but his glare left me no choice. As soon as I put the phone to my ear, my mother-in-law's screech assaulted me. You good for nothing! How could you? She yelled. My son slaves away at 2 jobs, and you're squandering property. Worthless spendthrift. I knew you'd bring nothing but losses. I listened silently to this torrent of insult. My gaze was fixed on the small screen in my hands, hidden from my husband. While Vivian spewed venom, I pressed the zoom button. The map enlarged. The blinking dot was far outside the city, about 60 miles away, in some remote area. Good thing they hadn't stripped it for parts in the first garage. They'd driven it somewhere intact. That thought gave me strength. I understand everything, Vivian, I said quietly and hung up, cutting off another round of curses. I handed the phone back to Marcus. Mom's upset, he noted with satisfaction. So am I replied, looking him straight in the face for the first time that evening. There was no fear in my gaze anymore, just determination to act. The sudden change in me seemed to unsettle him more than tears or hysteria would have. He expected anything but this. Marcus frowned, deciding I was still in shock. He ramped up the pressure. Okay, since you've come to your senses a bit, we need to figure out what to do next. He sat in the armchair across from me, adopting a strict boss pose. The car was expensive. Insurance, even if they pay out, won't cover half the value. And that won't happen soon. We're left without wheels and without money. All because of you. He paused, letting me feel the full depth of my guilt. So, I think it's fair, if you help fix the situation. I stayed silent, staring at him. I no longer tried to see the man I'd married in him. He wasn't there. Before me sat a stranger, cold and calculating. What do you suggest? My voice was even emotionless. You need to call your relatives, he snapped. Your aunt in the next state, your cousin. They have money. You messed up. You clean it up. Call and ask for a loan. Say we need a big sum to cover the loss. I stared at him, unbelieving. He hadn't just accused and humiliated me. Now he wanted to profit from this shared tragedy at my family's expense. He wanted me to shamefully call my kin and beg for money for something I hadn't done. This was rock bottom, utterly dark and icy. No, Marcus, I won't do that. What did you say? He jumped to his feet. Are you out of your mind? You have to. It's your duty to the family. My duty? I rose slowly. And what's your duty, Marcus? To humiliate me and demand money from my relatives? His face turned purple with anger. Don't you dare talk to me like that. You'll do what I say. He grabbed my arm, but I yanked it free. Inside me, the last thread binding us snapped. Now I was alone, and I knew help wouldn't come from anyone. I could only rely on myself and on that tiny blinking light on the screen of Dad's old device. You'll regret this, he growled and slammed the door. I heard him pacing in the kitchen, clanging dishes, muttering to himself. I was left alone in the silence. My hands still trembled, but not from fear anymore, from rage. I looked at the receiver again, which I'd been clutching the whole time, and noticed a change. The dot had stopped blinking. Now it glowed steadily, confidently. The signal was stable. Apparently, the car had stopped for good. I pressed zoom again. The map updated, and a label appeared next to the dot. I squinted to read the small letters. Elite Spa Resort. Paradise Haven. What? What spa resort? It didn't make sense. Thieves driving a stolen car to relax at some paradise spot? It sounded insane. Then a horrifying realization hit me, and my heart raced faster. I dashed to the laptop, opened a search engine, and typed in Paradise Haven with shaking fingers. The first link led to the hotel's website. It had live camera feeds showing the beauties of this Eden-like garden, pine forest, lake, elegant buildings, relaxed faces of guests, a couple sipping champagne on the terrace, a woman in a white robe leaving the spa center, and there the parking lot. Among luxury imports, I spotted my cherry-red beauty. She stood there calmly, clean and unharmed. In that moment, everything clicked. Every piece of this disgusting puzzle fell into place. His rage, his vile lies to the police, his screams about my guilt, his unforgivable demands to borrow money from my family. I realized the car hadn't been stolen. It wasn't theft. It was a monstrous, cruel performance where I was cast as the victim, and he, my husband, was the director. He'd used some accomplices to just take my car and drive it there. Meanwhile, he'd painted me as the guilty one, humiliated and accused me, demanding I beg my relatives for cash. Fury and resentment filled every cell of my body. My goal shifted. Now, it wasn't just about finding the car. I needed to reclaim my dignity, expose his lies, and make him pay for everything, for every tear, every insult. Rage turned to icy calculation. I had to act, drive there immediately. I grabbed my bag and froze. Money. How would I get there? The resort was 60 miles from the city. Bus, then taxi. That required cash, and I had none. Marcus always controlled our joint finances. He'd transfer my salary to his account for convenience, giving me small amounts for household needs. I opened my wallet, a few crumpled bills for groceries. I knew the card was empty. I felt trapped in a cage. He'd thought of everything. He was probably there now, at Paradise Haven, laughing at me, while I sat here, locked in 4 walls without a penny. What a brilliant, vile trap. At that moment, the phone rang again. Marcus. My hand instinctively moved to reject the call, but I forced myself to answer. I had to play my role to the end. Yes, I said, as calmly as possible. Well? Impatience laced his voice. Did you call your aunt? How much will she give? We need the money now. I found a great used car option. Gotta put down a deposit. My vision darkened. He wasn't just relaxing, he planned to buy another car with my family's money. What monstrous audacity. What hypocrisy. I haven't gotten through yet, I managed, barely holding back the tremble in my voice. Her phone's probably off. Then call your cousin, move it, he ordered. No time. I'll call back in an hour. He hung up. I sank into a chair, no strength left. He was rushing me for money to fund his getaway and new purchase. Despair drove me mad. I was trapped alone, humiliated, utterly helpless. I scanned the room. What did I have? What could I do? My gaze landed on a thin gold chain with a small pendant, another gift from Dad. He'd given it to me on my 18th birthday. For good luck, sweetie, he'd said. I touched it with my fingers. It felt warm and alive. I clenched it in my fist, saying goodbye. The nearest pawn shop was a couple of blocks away. A grumpy appraiser in smudged glasses tossed my treasure on the scales, snorted disdainfully, and handed me a few wrinkled bills. The money was laughably little, but enough for a ticket to the resort and back. I felt like I'd sold not gold, but a piece of my soul, a piece of my memory of Dad. But I knew he'd understand. He'd want me to fight for myself. The bus station greeted me with noise and bustle. I bought a ticket for the next bus and sat by the window. The whole ride, I stared out at the passing dreary landscapes, thinking. Fear and doubts gnawed at me from inside. What if I'm wrong? What if it's some horrific mistake? What would I say when I got there? What would I do? Burst in screaming? Cause a scene? The thought alone made me sick. I'd never been one for scandals. Marcus always exploited that, knowing I'd rather swallow the insult than argue. The bus dropped me at a dusty stop by the turnoff to the resort. 3 more miles to Paradise Haven. My last cash went to a taxi. and there I was. Huge sign, manicured grounds, barrier gate. I got out, my heart pounding wildly. Right in the guest parking lot, gleaming in the sun, stood she, my cherry red darling. All doubts evaporated. I didn't head to the main entrance. I didn't search for Marcus. I stepped aside, sat on a bench under the pines, away from prying eyes. I pulled out my passport and car documents from my bag. I always carried them. Deep breath in, out, calming my racing heart. Then I took out my phone and dialed the police. Hello, this is Olivia. I'm at the Paradise Haven Spa Resort. I see my car here, listed as stolen. Yes, I'm the owner. All documents are with me. No, I don't want to approach it myself. I request your assistance in recovering my property. The officer on the line told me to stay put and not leave. The wait was long and agonizing. I sat on the bench, staring at my car, replaying the upcoming scene in my head. Fear battled righteous anger. What if Marcus twists his way out? What if he paints me as crazy again? About 15 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up to the resort. Out stepped an older, calm-looking police captain. He approached me, introduced himself, and asked for documents. I handed him my passport and vehicle registration. He studied them carefully, then looked at the car, at me, and nodded understandingly. Your husband took the car, you say? He asked. Yes, and his mother, my mother-in-law, is probably in on it. The captain frowned. Got it. Let's go, Olivia, we'll sort this out. His confidence boosted mine. I walked beside him to the main entrance with my head held high. We entered the lobby and headed to the restaurant, where soft music and clinking glasses drifted out. I scanned the room and spotted them. They sat at the best table by the panoramic window overlooking the lake. My husband Marcus and his mom Vivian. A bottle of expensive champagne and plates of fancy appetizers stood before them. They laughed loudly. Vivian was animatedly telling something, and Marcus gazed at her with love and gratitude. At that moment he looked up and met my eyes. His smile froze and slowly faded. He saw me, then the uniformed man beside me. Marcus turned pale as a sheet. The champagne glass trembled in his hand. Vivian followed his gaze, her face twisted with fury. You! How did you get here? She hissed, jumping up. What do you think you're doing? Bringing the police? She moved toward me, but the captain stepped forward, blocking her. Calmly but authoritatively, he addressed my husband, who seemed glued to his chair. Good day, Captain Harlan here. Sir, please present your documents and explain on what grounds you're using the vehicle belonging to your wife. Marcus was silent, opening and closing his mouth like a fish out of water. He couldn't squeeze out a word. All his fake confidence, all his cruelty gone. Before us sat a pathetic, scared man. The eyes of other restaurant patrons were fixed on our table. People stopped eating and talking, watching the unfolding drama. What do you think you're doing? Vivian shrieked again. He's her husband. He had every right to take the car. We'll file a complaint against you. Ma'am, calm down, the captain replied evenly. A theft report was filed. The car belongs to Olivia. Your son misled her and unlawfully took her property. That's fraud, so I'd advise you to keep it down. The word fraud sobered Marcus like a slap. He shrank and, without lifting his eyes, pulled the key fob from his pocket. My keys. The captain took them and handed them to me. Let's go, Olivia. Retrieve your belongings and close this matter. We left them sitting at the table, amid the hushed restaurant, disgraced and humiliated. In the parking lot, I thanked the captain. He bid farewell and drove off. I got into my car, into the familiar seat, and for the first time in 24 hours breathed normally. I opened the glove compartment to check if everything was in place and remove any junk Marcus might have left. My hand hit a thick plastic folder. I'd never seen it before. Curiosity won. I opened it. Inside were bank statements for an account in Marcus's name, with a huge sum, 6 zeros, money he'd secretly saved for years, skimmed from our joint income. At that moment, Marcus and Vivian approached the car. He probably wanted to say something, try to justify himself. I got out and silently showed him the folder. I'm filing for divorce, Marcus. I think my lawyer will be very interested in these documents during the property division. I didn't wait for a reply, got back in the car, started the engine, and slowly drove off the lot. In the rearview mirror, I saw his bewildered face and her rage-twisted one. I drove away from them, from that lie, from that life. Secrets always come to light. Dad was right. Ahead lay a new road, my own. The drive home felt endless and yet too short. I turned on the radio and some old forgotten song from my youth poured from the speakers. I drove and for the first time in years cried openly. These were tears of liberation. With each tear, the humiliation and years of built-up pain flowed out. I wasn't mourning the collapsed marriage, but the lost time. I mourned the naive girl who'd wanted so badly to believe in love that she'd let herself become a shadow. As I entered the city, the tears dried. In their place came a quiet, firm certainty. First, I didn't go home but to my cousin's place. She opened the door, and without a word, I just hugged her. I told her everything, and she listened, her eyes filling with anger. "What a scumbag," she said when I finished. "And his mother, too. Good, you left. Stay with me as long as you need." That night, for the first time in ages, I slept peacefully, without flinching at every sound. The next morning I found the best divorce lawyer in town, a strict, businesslike woman who, after hearing my story and reviewing the folder's documents, said shortly, "We'll strip him bare by law." She immediately prepared a motion to freeze Marcus's secret account. His money was locked that same day. I changed my phone number to cut all ties, but I knew from my cousin that he called her begging, pleading for my new number, saying he loved me, that he was wrong. A month passed. I rented a small but cozy apartment. The divorce process chugged along, and the lawyer assured me half the hidden money was rightfully mine. I looked at my cherry red car parked outside the window. It was no longer just Dad's gift. It had become a symbol of my freedom, a symbol that even from the deepest pit, you can climb out if you find the strength to fight. You just need to take the first step and not fear facing the truth, no matter how terrifying. And how would you act in Olivia's place? Write in the comments below, as your opinion matters a lot to me. Thanks so much for listening to this story.